Well, good morning. This is Ian. Our apologies for the wind noise issues yesterday. Hopefully today we can resolve that. I'll keep working on the technical issues there. Anyway, it is the morning of Tuesday, 17th of April 2018. See, I'm back here at Misson Springs in North Nottinghamshire. Back on the front line of the anti-fracking campaign against IGAS, our old foe from Barton Moss. But I'm going to cover a little bit of the ground that I covered yesterday due to the problems of the wind noise from the lookout point above Burnley, otherwise known as the Panopticon. And as I said yesterday, very strange sense of humour for anybody or the people that named that. Perhaps maybe most of them unknowing. Meanwhile, of course, yesterday in Parliament, Theresa May was desperately trying to recover the moral high ground, and of course there's not a cat's chance in hell of that being achieved, considering that she is now the third British Prime Minister of the 21st century to be a war criminal. And, you know, I still live in the with the vision that one day I will get to witness Tony Blair incarcerated for his war crimes. And of course, once he goes, then David Cameron and Theresa May should be following hot on his heels, because these prime ministers have committed the atrocity of launching an unprovoked attack on another sovereign nation against all international law. Whatever BS they put out in an attempt to justify their actions, the reality is they are war criminals. And although she's desperately trying to avoid, obviously, any kind of vote in Parliament, the reality is that the vast majority of people around the UK know fine well that she, as Trump's bitch, initiated the missile launch against Syria on the early hours of Saturday morning without going to Parliament, because she knew she would lose. Just as Cameron had lost 4.5 years ago in August of 2013, she knew that she would not get the support in Parliament to unleash the missile attack. And now, of course, it gives the hawks the opportunity to ramp up the fear against Russia. Well, I would say that any concern we have is actually much closer to home than it is to Russia. But obviously, once again, I make the observation that although it may seem a long, long way from anti-fracking, it's absolutely crucial that the anti-fracking community pay attention, because the hawks, who are desperate to establish global conflict with Russia and with China, because they want to re-establish the global hegemony of the global banksters, to establish the global financial control, with the petrodollar being the reserve currency. And of course, any country that has the audacity to initiate or grow their economy without borrowing outrageous sums of money from the IMF or from the World Bank is perceived as a threat. So watch this space, because if they get their way, then the reality is that any opposition to fracking in the UK will simply be ridden roughshod over on the grounds of national security. But you know, there are other threats, but on to a little later. But you know, meanwhile, I want to reiterate, you know, what an amazing job all the people that have been involved in the hearings of the North Yorkshire Minerals and Waste Plan, because it does look as though, you know, what was in the draft, i.e. a 500-metre set-aside zone, so no drilling and certainly no fracking within 500 surface metres of any residential property or other sensitive receptor. Now that's a key phrase, because pretty much that means any life form that has the potential to be affected by the fracking activity, which I would say is pretty much everything. So the industry, funnily enough, has reacted as expected, rather badly. But there is precedent for this, and that precedent is Dallas. And back in 2013, the city of Dallas, of course, which was built on the backs of the oil and gas industry, introduced a 1,500 feet set-aside zone because the city was becoming increasingly concerned about the risks to city residents by an out-of-control unconventional gas industry. And of course the Barnett Shale, which surrounds that whole area of North Texas, now has an exclusion zone within the city of Dallas itself, and that's 1,500 feet from any residential building or any public building. So that's effectively the precedent that it seems that North Yorkshire have built upon. And here, of course, because we're metric, it's 500 meters. So the industry, as I say, reacted badly. And just give you some quotes. Alan Lynn, the director of Third Energy, who has demonstrated that he has really no capacity to be a director. I mean, certainly he's not able to manage the finances of Third Energy in any satisfactory way. So much so, of course, that Barclays Bank basically told Third Energy to go whistle when they went begging for more funding, and rightly so. And Alan Lynn said, when you draw a 500-meter radius around properties in the area we propose to develop, it doesn't leave much space. Well, maybe that's the point, Alan. Maybe you should actually be getting the message. I know it's tough for you, but maybe you should be getting the message after all this time that, you know, you're not actually in the most popular industry. And that, you know, there is so much more creativity out there than you can ever begin to muster. And let me tell you, Alan, that the moment that you, or Third Energy, or whomever it is that owns Third Energy, raise your heads above the parapets with any attempt to go back to Kirby Misperton, there's far more creativity waiting in the wings than you could possibly imagine, Horatio. Anyway, a 500-meter zone is effectively a sterilization zone. The effect of the plan is to stop the development of unconventional hydrocarbons. And you went on to say, I have a major concern about this approach. Well, we have a major concern about your approach, Alan. You are a cowboy in a cowboy outfit. You know, I would love to sit in a public arena with you and discuss Third Energy's finances, as I'm sure many others would, because basically you have shown that you are so incompetent in the management of even a tin pot corporation. How could you ever be trusted to manage a complex activity like fracking? And you even had the audacity to say all the legislation exists and we have gold standard regulation. Really, Alan? So now you've resorted to literally regurgitating the tired, trotted out by the likes of the Oil and Gas Authority, you, Coog, Kevin Hollinsnake, and everybody else with this industry, or should I say is on the payroll. Lynn Calder, the high maintenance commercial director of INEOS, she says this is a ban by any other name. Well spotted, Lynn. So now maybe you should actually give the appropriate advice to Jim Ratcliffe and say, you know what, Jim, actually it's probably better that we stop throwing money after this because it ain't going anywhere. There is so much opposition out there. And where are we at right now? Oh yeah, we're going to launch another legal challenge against the North Yorkshire decision to implement a 500-meter exclusion zone. In addition to our legal challenges against the Scottish Government, against the National Trust, and against all the protectors who are mounting increasing challenges against our operation. And we're not even at first base yet. We haven't even got permission to establish a well site anywhere in England. So just maybe, Jim, we should pull the plug on this. But you won't, because you want to say whatever your boss wants to hear or what you think your boss wants to hear. And so you're likely to say, it's all right, Jim, don't worry, we've got this. Yeah, I know we're up against a lot of challenges, but we've got it. Yeah, in your dreams, Lynn. So My counsel is, you know, don't follow the lead of your QC, Natalie Livens. You know, she is on an enormous piece of cash to lie and try to push for your interests. But the reality is, fortunately, an increasing number of people know exactly what the game plan is. And another player that emerged in the North Yorkshire hearings was Stuart Perigo. Now, this is the unfortunate named individual, because Perigo, of course, means danger in Portuguese. So Stuart Danger moves from Lancashire County Council, where he was a planning officer. He was actually pushing Lancashire County Council to approve the quadrilla applications to drill and frack at Prestonby Road and Rossiter. And of course, he was defeated by the council, but subsequently, of course, that was overturned by Saeed Javid. Well, Stuart Perigo, Stuart Danger, is now working as a consultant for the unconventional gas industry. So I guess, Stuart, that, you know, once again, there was far more of this on offer with the oil and gas industry than perhaps there was in retirement. But, you know, what do we expect? These are whores to the corporatocracy. And that's the only way they can be described, because they're not interested at all in the well-being of the communities in which invade. Now, as I said, you know, there's maybe another greater threat on the horizon. And thus the title of today's broadcast, Fracking into Eternity. Well, Into Eternity is the name of a truly outstanding documentary that was produced to take a look at the Finnish answer, that's Finland, and the way in which Finland has addressed the issue of disposing of their toxic nuclear waste. And I'll put a link to that documentary beneath this video. Now, it is subtitled, but I have to tell you that it's probably one of the very, very few documentaries that I have found totally gripping from start to finish, and endured having to follow it through subtitles. Now, what is that relevance here? Well, of course, for the last nearly 4 years, I have been trying, along with others, of course, to try and raise awareness of the fact that in the UK could actually be a red herring. That this could be simply the quest to establish a network of deep boreholes to dispose of toxic nuclear waste right across the whole of the north. We are now just 2 days away from the end of the consultation period on the National Policy Statement for Geological Disposal Infrastructure. Now, I'm going to put some links under this video, and yeah, I know we're right on the cusp, but nonetheless, what's really, really important is that people start to become aware that the British government is pushing ahead with this agenda to establish a deep borehole disposal facility, or facilities, for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. And they make the observation, this isn't about the temporary disposal, it's about the permanent disposal of toxic nuclear waste. And let's just put into perspective what permanent disposal means. It means in excess of 100,000 years. And in the documentary, Into Eternity, you will see the two Finnish scientists snigger when they respond to the question about how long the facility is expected to last. You know, in the UK, the onshore oil and gas industry has been around for barely 100 years. And in that time, it has drilled around about 2,160 wells. Well, in less than 100 years, we have no idea where some of those wells are. And for some of the other wells, even though we may know where they are, we have no idea who is responsible for them. And consequently, it basically falls down to the landowner. Well, the reality is that's just 100 years. Imagine in 100,000 years. Now, if you believe in the timeline of Orthodox history, that means that the pyramids are around about 3,500 years old. And we have no idea, really, who built them or how. And that's 1/30th of the timeline that is intended for the deep borehole disposal of toxic nuclear waste. So what could possibly go wrong other than just about everything? And of course, the reason that the British government is looking at a network of deep boreholes across the north of England primarily is so that when the cancer clusters start to appear, they can say, well, it's not really a cancer cluster, is it? Because it's the whole of the north of England. And so you can't actually pin it on the disposal of the deep borehole waste. It could be anything. And of course, actually, by the time these things start to manifest, then maybe everyone's forgotten where this stuff was actually buried, which might actually be the intention. So, a lot of documentation perhaps to get through and, get in your objection. But more importantly, perhaps, is to get the objection in, because that objection is due in by the closing date, which is April the 19th. And of course, those who are aware, that is a very interesting date in the it is the day of sacrifice by fire. And if you actually Google April 19th and you look at some of the significant events that have occurred on that particular date, then you might be forgiven for thinking that it's more than just a coincidence. However, what is crucial is that with everything that's going on right now, of course, that we encourage people to take an interest in what's going on. And on May the 3rd, there is the opportunity, particularly in Lancashire, to register your concern about the unfolding agenda. And I know that many of my colleagues consider, voting to be an absolute anathema. And, if you're voting, then you're participating in the system. Well, I respect that view. But the reality is that the establishment don't want you to vote. They don't care why you don't vote. They just don't want you to vote. Because they know that the people who do vote are malleable in most cases, are manipulable, and will follow whatever lead is pumped out by the lamestream media. Well, the establishment, of course, are also aware that the vast majority of people who elect not to vote are independent thinkers. They are people that are capable of independent thought, capable of actually researching across multiple platforms and coming to their own determination about what is unfolding. And they don't want those people to vote because they know that those people will not really do what they are led to do by the establishment media. So, if you can bring yourself to actually get down to the polling station, assuming that you are registered to vote, then, use your vote wisely. Now, at this stage of the 21st century, it's not a time to be captured by the tradition of following a particular political party. Look at who it is that is seeking to assist the global banksters establish their much vaunted global conflict. Look at who it is that is pushing an agenda to establish, at the very least, a network of fracked wells across the north of England and a few dotted around in the south. Look at who it is that is pushing the agenda to ultimately use those deep boreholes to dispose of toxic, get the right teeth in, toxic nuclear waste. And probably within 100 and something years, bury all the information about what was done, where it was buried, how it was buried, how it was disposed of, and just leave future generations to have to deal with the emerging consequences. So, thanks for joining me again this morning. Hopefully the wind noise is not so irritating as it was on yesterday's live stream. And we'll put the links beneath the video. But please, as I always implore, don't take anything I say at face value. That's not the purpose of me standing here in any way, shape or form. I am simply trying to stimulate people's curiosity so that they will do their own research. So thanks again, you have a great day, and I will catch you at 8:30 tomorrow morning.